Scene 110, take 17.
The American Hotel, to me, was like a beacon, a focal point of the art district. It seemed to be located right in the center, where you got the hotel full of artists and musicians. Al's Bar was underneath of it. Bloom's General Store was there. Before that, it was Coffee Strippers. Before that, it was Stacy's bookstore, To the Curb. There were readings there, there were plays going on in there, music going on in there. To me, it was kind of a magic place, and that's how I viewed it, because I wasn't inside the place. I was always on the outside, looking up at the windows and hearing people playing guitars, hearing parties going on, laughing. I thought, gee, I want to get in there, but I couldn't. I wasn't part of it. My partner at the time wasn't a downtown person. He was a Beverly Hills person. He pulled out and decided he was going to sell the building. I ended up having to move out. Unfortunately, I lost this grand community arts center that the whole neighborhood appreciated. I'm sure I certainly appreciated it. And as you know, I'm living at the old Al's Bar. I give Sean Thine credit for it. We were just happened to be standing on the sidewalk outside, and Sean goes, "This place is empty. Why don't you rent this one?" So I went in with some friends and tore all the drywall out. I wanted all the exposed brick. I just loved the inside of it. It looked so European. We got to see the old Al's Bar again. Even before the Al's Bar, the old restaurant it used to be, the things that have been there since when that building was built. It was almost like a dig. Well, you're tearing things down, and all of a sudden you'd find like a little piece of graffiti. There was an old chimney. This old chimney had some loose bricks. And as I'm pulling them out, there was a statue of the Madonna hidden inside there. I don't know how long it was there, but I saw it as some kind of a good and protective omen, so I kept it in there, and I replaced the bricks, and I just left it behind. There are 3 rooms. Where the bar used to be and the pool table became my kitchen and my office. We had a line of desks, and that's where we worked on the Bedlam magazine. The second room, which where the stage was, became an entertainment room. We refurbished the stage. I put in little tables for drinking. And then the third room, where they threw the kegs of beer and stuff, that became my living quarters. It was very comfortable. People would come in, they were like, "I can't believe I'm in Al's Bar. This place looks so different." I refer to it as Al's Bar because that's what everybody knows this location as. See, no one in downtown would think of that as Bedlam. They just think of it as Al's Bar. It'll be Al's Bar for, I guess, forever, until something bigger can overshadow it. The Citizen was over at Mark Walsh's building down the block. Jonathan Gerald, he was the editor of The Citizen. One day I walked in and he was shoving all of his paperwork in his briefcase, and "Where are you going?" He goes, "I'm out of here. I quit." "Well, what are you going to do now?" And he goes, "You want to start a magazine?" I said, "Sure, can we call it Bedlam?" He goes, "Yeah." So that's how the magazine started. Bedlam magazine was about local artists, upcoming shows, reviews, street art. I was trying to figure out a way of conveying the circus into a print form, a magazine, which ended up being very difficult. I had no idea the capital you need to produce an art magazine. It became incredibly expensive, especially at the time when other magazines like Coagula were just giving up on printing, going right onto the internet. It was exciting setting it up. Jonathan was the editor-in-chief. We had donations from local writers, and I laid it out on my computer. Went back to my old illustration roots and did this cover. An illustration of City Hall with Shepherd Ferry posters all stuck to it. When we first went to the printer to pick it up, we had to take a couple of cars. It was a huge brick of magazines that we had to drag back. And then Jonathan Gerald and I personally delivered them. We went to Culver City and we dropped them off at galleries. We went out to Pomona and dropped them at galleries and newsstands. We went all over downtown, dropping them off in the entrances of loft buildings and things like that for people could pick it up. One issue out, one issue. I know how to paint. I think I can paint rather well, but I don't call myself an artist. To be an artist, I think it takes a dedication and commitment. I know artists that would spend their money on a tube of cadmium red before they'd buy themselves food. That's not me. Ever since I moved here to Florida, there's not a whole bunch to do here. So I picked it up again. I've been painting portraits. Commercial artwork is something that's needed. It's needed to sell a product or convey a message. As a painter, you work your way through it as you go. So sometimes you don't know what you're going to end up with at the end. It took me a long time to get to that because I approached every painting that I did like an illustration. So it took me a while. I finally got it down to a point where I felt they looked good enough where I could say, okay, I like this one. The other thing about doing commercial work is there's always somebody you have to please. Somebody could arbitrarily come in and say, well, I like it, but I want that background to be green. Change it. And if you want the money, you got to do it. Nobody tells a fine artist what to do. I used to describe the difference between commercial art and fine art is that fine art asks questions, whereas commercial artwork answers them. It solves problems. One night, Matt Aston came to me, and he said that he had a chance to curate a show at the Higgins Gallery. And I was talking about the idea of having a collector's show. It raises a whole new series of questions. Why do people collect? Why do you have to have paintings of dolphins? So I was telling this to Matt Aston, and he said, can I take your idea? And I said, well, you'd be my guest. He goes, okay, would you be the collector? Take your whole collection over to the Higgins Gallery and hang it there. And we hung that show, and we filled that place full of art. It looked absolutely fantastic. My personal collection is quite eclectic. There's all kinds of work. It's all downtown artists. Madison was curating this show, and he was doing a fabulous job. And we had a little disagreement about how something should be hung. You know how big Matt Aston is. And I'm not big at all. This guy, he kind of puffed up, and he looked down through his eyebrows at me, and he said, don't you fucking tell me how I should think. I remained cool. I went like this with my fingers. Okay, Matt, whatever you say. He went, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that to you. And he went back inside. I was completely rattled. He scared the crap out of me. I had to stay outside and actually smoke a cigarette until I was able to calm down and then go back inside and face him again. Considering my collection isn't for sale, we invited artists that were in my collection to show new work on the opposite side of the gallery that was for sale. It not only helped the Higgins economically, but also they were a new gallery, so it helped them give them a whole new group of artists to start showing themselves. That was the thing about this downtown community. If one of their own was in trouble, everybody helped come to the rescue. Arturo Nunez got into a little difficulty driving across Texas. He was pulled over for, well, being next to him with a California car, you know. And I believe they found, like, I don't know, a couple of pounds of marijuana in the trunk of the car that didn't belong to him. And he had to get a lawyer, and he needed $5,000. So we put on a benefit to get Arturo out of jail. Local artists in the neighborhood would donate a piece of artwork to be sold. They were all silent auctions. There was one for Terry Ellsworth when he had his heart transplant. My mother fell on hard times. She ended up getting involved with a grifter. She lost her house and all of her savings. And I thought, I can't help her. I don't have enough cash. So Sean said, why don't we throw her a benefit? Everybody knows your mom. Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, she was there making these stupendous dinners and food for all these artists. Every artist knew her. And all these artists came in. They brought artwork to be auctioned off. We raised $6,000. And I added $2,000 to that. She was able to buy this house that we're sitting in now. This house is basically purchased by the generosity of my community in downtown LA. Joe Bloom fought for that community constantly. He was a city hall guy. When people like Rolo and Alberto and I were handling the entertainment of the crowd, he was handling the politics of the neighborhood. Where the SciArc building is, they wanted to make it a book depository. Joel went to a city hall meeting and wanted them to vote against it. They didn't want trucks rolling through the neighborhood. They didn't want to think about the crime or prostitution or the drugs that were going to come in with these loading dock areas. So he asked anybody in the neighborhood that wanted to come down and sit in the gallery as he spoke. Everybody showed up. The place was so packed they couldn't even fit everyone in. It was standing room only in the back. When Joel Bloom stood up to speak, people started applauding. The gavel came down saying, we want quiet, we want quiet. And at the end, when Joel Bloom finished, and he turned around to leave, the entire room, we're talking about 200 people or more, all stood up at once. You just heard this rushing sound of everyone standing up and leaving until the whole room was empty. They were all there for Joel. That left enough impression with the council to ban the book depository. It never happened. He was the advocate of the community.
I think there can be a thriving arts community here.
And I said, well, Joel, where are we going to park? What happens when the parking meters go up and no one can afford to live here anymore? He goes, you don't understand. I go, well, I guess I don't. Get out of my store. I really liked Joel Bloom, and he had a really short temper. But once you got to know him, you realize there were certain things that you didn't do, like never ask Joel Bloom a question. You'd have to get him to give you an answer without having to ask him directly. And then you were okay. He called me a thug. Sean Thine was a hooligan because he's Irish. He said, oh, it's the hooligan and the thug. Back again. This isn't a library. Buy a magazine or get out. I went in one time to buy a pack of cigarettes, and I had a date with me, and there was a guy staying in front of me. He goes, I'd like a pack of Marlboro, please. And Joel just went, we don't have any goddamn Marlboro. Get out of my store. The guy went, okay, and he left, and I woke up and go, I'll have a pack of Marlboro, please. Oh, man. His eyes were shaking. He was so angry. He goes, get out. And I go, no, I want a pack of cigarettes. Give me something else then. He goes, get out. I go, I'm not leaving until I get my cigarettes. He finally shoved the pack at me. And I go, you know something? Hell with that guy. I'm not going back in that store again. I'll get my cigarettes somewhere else. I stayed away for a couple of weeks. And he noticed. I was staying in the Starbucks in front of Bloom's, and Bloom came out with a Cuban cigar. And he handed him, he goes, here, Fittipaldi, try this and let me know what you think. And he turned around and walked back inside, and I went, well, that's an apology. One night, I went to Joel's to rent a movie, and I asked him if he had any Pink Panther films. And he goes, Peter Sellers acting like Jerry Lewis?
What sort of stupid question is that? Are you blind? Yes.
They're ridiculous. No, I don't have them. So I went outside, and anytime somebody was walking in, or I said, ask Joel if he has a Pink Panther movie. I must have told us about 20 people, and they all did it, just to piss him off. About a week later, I went in, and he goes, all right, Fittipaldi, I got your goddamn Pink Panther movies here, all of them. I go, what? Peter Sellers acting like Jerry Lewis? I don't want to see that, and I left. If you know Don, you realize that he always talked very low and he mumbled.
Handsome, dashing, daring, debonair, suave, sweet, mellow, cool.
Honestly, I didn't hear half the things he was saying to me. He brought me this gift for my birthday one time from Borneo. It's a piece of hardwood. It's an arm of a Buddha. I call it the arm of God. It's one of those precious things that I always carry around with me. One night I was at his loft. He was going through his stuff. And he had one of those plastic-bound books that you keep business cards in. He said, here, do you want this? And he shoves it across the table. And inside of it are cards, and there must have been 50 or so cards, of concierge from 4-star hotels from all over the world. And he says to me, did you know that if you're a concierge at one hotel and you were to go to another hotel and give them your business card, you'll get a free room and meals? And I thought about it, oh, you son of a bitch. You're going around posing as these people? And he gave me that little smiling Don Jones wink. He was a grifter extraordinaire. You didn't care. You just loved him anyway because he was such a great character. There was a point where I started making these dolls. And I made this as a gift to Don, but unfortunately he passed away before I could give it to him. It goes with the arm I carried around with me to remember him by. I lived at a very brief moment at the American Hotel. I was thrown out of the Old Al's bar, and I was only there for 1 year. It was the last month before my lease was due, and they just tossed me out. I really didn't have anywhere to go, so Terry Ellsworth said, hey, there's a guy upstairs who went off to Europe for like a month. And he gave me the key, so I actually kidnapped this room and lived in it for about a month. Some of the neighbors knew I was there, but nobody cared, and even the manager of the hotel knew I was there, but he was a friend, so he didn't care either. Honestly, I don't know how anybody could live in those rooms. They're so tiny. You know, the bathroom down the hallway. People used to tell me it's the cheapest place in downtown to live. But if you figure out the square footage of that room and what you're paying for it, man, it's probably one of the most expensive places to live in downtown. I'm not there. I haven't been there since 2008. So I can only comment on what I read on Facebook or what my old friends tell me. It sounds like the place has really grown. I don't know completely for the better because they call it the art district. Boom. Where are the artists? If they get priced out, is it really an art district anymore? Only by title. Who's left but, people with lots of money that don't create art? Everything we did was completely illegal by the standards of the law. I could wound up in jail. That not happened because those very carefully designed parties were very strict about who showed up, a noise level. Everything had to be hush-hush. I mean, people understood that it was illegal, but it was so much fun. I go, if you don't want this to be spoiled, keep your mouth shut. I thought that time would last forever. It was the best 20 years of my life. I was lucky that it lasted that long. And I got to know all the people I did. And I got to know a lot of people. That was the greatest neighborhood I've ever lived in. Philadelphia, New York, forget it, man. Downtown LA was the most wonderful community. People were so supportive. Everybody gathered together in that community to support one another. I've never seen anything like that before, anywhere. I loved the place. I loved living there. Sean Thine and I, we had so much fun, and it was so exciting. It was like we jumped in the air and we stayed there.
Cut.